Just before we start, we would like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Project Tech Conferences. They are a student-led nonprofit organization that provides conferences and events for high school and middle school students on the topics of technology. In the past, they have done workshops on HTML and CSS, envisioning VR, UN AI, cybersecurity, and IoT. If you are interested in participating in their events, we will send their social media accounts in the chat. Be sure to check them out.
Okay, so now I'll be starting with questions for our university students. The first question is, what university do you go to and why did you choose to go there for computer science? So to start us off, we'll be hearing from Annie.
All right, hi everyone, this is Annie. So glad to be here with you all today. This is actually a great question that I actually struggled to answer in the past year. I'm actually currently taking a year off of school, working at an internship in Ottawa. But before that, I went to University of Toronto for my first year in computer science. Halfway through my internship, I actually transferred. So now technically I am registered at Wilfrid Laurier and University of Waterloo for the CS BBA dual degree program. I actually chose to go into computer science because, as silly as it sounds, both my parents did it and naturally they wanted me to give it a go, try it out. I didn't have that many kind of specific career interests in grade 12, and U of T happened to offer me the most scholarship money, so I just went for it. Later on, I actually discovered that I really like computer science, and through founding my business, my venture, Project Tech Conferences, I realized that I'm actually really interested in business and finding the intersection of both of them. So that's kind of why I transferred.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Next we have Maria.
Hi. So I chose the computer science program at the University of Ottawa, mainly because of their co-op program and location. I really liked the idea of their co-op program. There was a lot of jobs in the area because of the government positions in the capital, but also the large amount of tech companies, especially in the Canada area. And I knew there would be a lot of opportunities to try different types of positions to find the real ideal for me, because I also don't really know what I'm going to do with my future yet, but I'm looking to find that out.
Great, thanks so much. Next we have Henry.
Hi everyone, so my name is Henry and I just completed my first year at the University of Waterloo. So I think the main reason why I chose to pursue computer science at the University of Waterloo is because of its co-op program. So I think Waterloo has one of the best co-op programs in North America, and it's because you get to do 4-month or 8-month work terms throughout your studies here. And at the end, when you graduate, you'll have around, I think, 2 years of work experience already. So that puts you at a really good advantage compared to other university students who are just coming out of their studies. And it makes looking for a job so much easier. And also, from all the different work terms that you get to do, you get to explore working for different companies or doing different roles. So like for me, I really don't know what I want to do right now. So the co-op program gives me a really good opportunity to explore my possibilities in computer science. And also just in general, why I chose computer science and why I chose Waterloo instead, other than the co-op program. I think Waterloo is like, they provide a lot of great courses that go really in depth. And I know Waterloo has a reputation for being quite hard, and I definitely think that's true, but I think it's like a good amount of hard because it pushes its students to go deeper and learn more knowledge about computer science, and it prepares them well for the workplace, definitely. So yeah.
For our next question, we have, what can high school students do to prepare for a computer science university program? For example, what languages or skills are the most useful to have or know? We can start with Maria.
So for the University of Ottawa, the first class you take is Python, and that one is an introduction to computer science class, so no previous knowledge actually required. And it goes really deep into understanding why you use the tools using the language. And the second class you take is in Java, and this one's not an introduction. You pick up right where you left off with Python, but in a different language. So what I would say is that it's useful to have some basic knowledge of Java syntax beforehand, but I came into the program with very like minimal knowledge of Python, and I find that just knowing how coding works is enough to succeed since you're going to university to learn anyways. If you're already comfortable with coding, I would say doing some personal projects for yourself is a great way to prepare, since learning independently is definitely a great skill in this.
Next, we can have Henry if you would like to add on to that.
Yeah, so at the University of Waterloo in your first year, the first programming course you take is Racket, which is honestly not a very useful programming course for like in the real world, but it's mostly of a learning language. So a lot of schools teach it to teach you the basics and make sure you understand what you are learning. And then in second term, you learn C, which is an actual language that people use in the real world, which is pretty nice. And I'd say like in terms of like knowing the languages, I'd say any language, like I think all of the languages are good. There's not really like one language that's a lot better that you should learn, because from my experience, after learning one language, it's so much easier to pick up the other ones. And you just need to learn a few syntax that's specific to the language you're learning. And really, you should just choose one and then get good with it. And then picking up new languages would be pretty easy. And then another advice I would give is if your high school offers a programming course and you know you want to do computer science, you should definitely take it, because that prepares you really well for university. And I know for the University of Waterloo specifically, for computer science, they highly recommend that you take a programming course in high school. And although they say their programming courses are for everyone and they're an introduction, in reality, they are quite fast paced. So it definitely helps if you have some previous knowledge from high school, and that would make your first year a lot easier and smoother.
Lastly, we have Annie.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Henry in that once you kind of master the fundamentals of coding, you can really apply it to different languages. So definitely pick one and work at it. I definitely have seen working in the industry for the past year as a co-op student, I've seen an emergence of Python. At U of T, we do also do 2 courses in first year on Python, Introduction to Computer Programming as well as Computer Science. They're both taught in Python. So it is very practical if you want a language that is used emergingly in the industry currently.
Awesome. So our next question is, how important are extracurricular activities for the application process? And we'll be starting off with Henry for this one.
Yeah, so extracurricular activities are very important for the application process, especially for Waterloo. So Waterloo is quite competitive. So a lot of the times it's your extracurriculars and volunteer or work experience that sets you apart from everyone else. And Waterloo actually has a supplemental application form that requires you to fill out your extracurricular activities, your work experience, or your volunteer experience. And then you have to do a quick description of your roles and then write the amount of time you spent on it. So they would love to see like if you do sports or like teamwork stuff, and then they would love to see commitment. So if you've done activities for the past few years, that would definitely be good to include. And Waterloo also puts an emphasis on awards and achievements. So they also provide, they have a form for that. So you need to fill out some of your achievements and awards throughout high school. So from all that, I'm pretty sure Waterloo puts a pretty big emphasis on extracurriculars and activities. And I think it's definitely good to have a variety of them, which can definitely help your application.
Thank you for that answer. Next we have Annie.
Yeah, on the topic of extracurricular activities, I definitely have seen programs getting more and more competitive every year, and things are crazy. We have students who are doing amazing things. But I would definitely place emphasis on the fact that I believe that with your extracurricular activities, it should be quality over quantity. You could have, 10 or 15 different involvements. Maybe you attended a club meeting here, attended a club meeting there. But what's really going to set you apart is if you were truly, involved, putting in those extra hours, going above and beyond, taking on leadership roles within those different involvements. That's what's really going to show through in your application. And moreover, a kind of application process to the program aside, your extracurricular activities are also used on a larger scale to measure how much scholarship money you might get and what kind of scholarship you might be eligible for. And if you go through kind of high school getting involved with tons and tons of activities, but you didn't really take on too many leadership roles, or you really have nothing to show for, nothing to write about, it's going to make that process really difficult. So definitely evaluate those extracurricular activities that are not only kind of relevant to the programs that you're applying to, but also make sure to put in those extra times on those activities where you can have a lot of self-development and write about those experiences.
Awesome, thanks. Finally, we'll be hearing from Maria.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Annie. I think that you have to really put yourself in the extracurricular activities that you're doing, and they really help highlight your soft skills. And they're not only important in applications for university, but these are also the types of activities you would put on your resume, especially for me, since I didn't have a lot of job experience when applying for my first co-op. I had to put a lot of my extracurricular activities to show the kind of applicant that I was and to highlight my skills. So if you have no job experience but lots of extracurricular experience related to computer science, that makes a big difference. But also different extracurricular activities related to any sort of thing, like if you're in a volunteering organization and you're an executive member doing, I don't know, treasure or something, that really does make a difference.
Thank you. So for our next question, we have, what are some things that would help high school students stand out on university applications and to CS-related employers for co-op and internships? To start us off, Annie, you may start.
Yeah, I think Maria touched upon this a little bit in her answer, but definitely your extracurriculars, especially those kind of related to volunteering, taking on a leadership role, will really stand out, especially if you don't have that big of a tech background, such as within my circumstance. I think one thing, I spoke to my recruiter after I worked in the company for a few months now, and they said that one thing that stood out was my leadership involvement in volunteer organizations in the community. I think definitely those opportunities don't necessarily require any technical background to go into. So if you see any, apply to those and get involved. Those are great ways to stand out. But the beauty of technology is that it doesn't really require that much schooling, and that there's a lot of things you can learn just online. And through online modules, online courses that you can take, even MIT has a plethora of resources available that you can learn coding skills from. And from there, you can explore different avenues, from web dev to app creation. These are all things that you can do from the comfort of your home, add on to your side projects, and really learn about coding. That will definitely make you stand out on any application.
Thank you for your answer. Next, we have Maria.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Other than any clubs or extracurricular activities, another big thing is personal projects that you've done and have links to GitLab so that the employer can see it for themselves if they're interested. And this is really useful because it shows how efficient or organized your code is, and it shows initiative. And also, if you go perhaps to certain, sometimes they have job meet and greets, and you can go and meet with certain employers and recruiters and introduce yourself. And that way, sometimes they either take your resume there, or sometimes they you just ask them to review your resume for you. And that really helps because you make a connection with the recruiter yourself instead of just waiting for the interview. But if you don't have any experience in the computer science field, then mention any other experience you have. For me, I didn't have a lot of experience when I started, but I mentioned my involvement with math contests and other events. and that highlighted, I think, my problem solving skills. So don't worry if you don't have too much experience, computer science experience going into it.
And last we have Henry.
I think if you can show you have a lot of initiative, then that would be really good for university applications and future co-op and internships. So in particular, I think if you have a really, if you have leadership roles in clubs at school, or if you founded a club, that would look really good on an application. I also think participating in hackathons or programming competitions would be very beneficial for university applications, because if they have a supplemental application, so I think U of T and Waterloo are the big ones that have one, they love to see that you have some experience participating in these things, or you just had the initiative to do something outside of school. And I know Waterloo also has a bunch of contests that they run, such as I know Euclid for grade 12 and the CCC, which is their programming contest. And they really want anyone who wants to apply for math or CS to take these contests. And it's not required, but I think they say it's strongly recommended. So definitely take those if you have the chance to. And other than that, just if you have any programming experience beforehand at all from doing your own projects or working on stuff at school with friends, like that would be really good for your applications.
Awesome, thanks. So the next question is, how much of a jump was it from high school programming courses to the university courses, and what are the main differences? So we're starting off with Maria.
I find that in high school, I was learning a lot of the language, like the syntax and the basics of programming. But in university, I found that I was more learning how to learn computer science on my own. So for instance, like I mentioned, that the first class was an introduction, where you go over all the basics from functions to recursion in one language. And then the next class you have to take is in a different language, but it isn't an introduction. You just pick up where you left off. So thanks to university, I feel a lot more confident to do work in different languages. But in high school, I sort of learned what computer science is and how it can be useful to solve problems.
Awesome, thanks. For the next, we'll be hearing from Henry.
So I found the jump to be quite big, but it was definitely manageable. So I think in high school, it was very like lecture based. You go to school for 6 hours and then you come home, you have like a few hours of homework and then you're done. But at university, there was a lot less time spent in class, at least for computer science, and a lot more time spent studying on your own. So on average, I think I had about 3 lectures a day, which averaged out to 3 hours of class time a day. So basically half of school. But then I would probably have to spend the same amount of time every day reviewing what I learned in class and making sure I understood the material. So I think university puts a lot of emphasis on self-learning and like your own responsibilities, since you can easily just go to the 3 classes and then go back and relax for the rest of the day, but you really need to review the material every day or else you'll fall behind. And then I think the material was covered at a much faster rate and also a lot more in depth. So to put that into like perspective, I remember in grade 12 calculus, we spent about a week on one specific concept, but then in university, we spent 1 lecture on it. And I was really surprised since that was part of the AP curriculum. So not all high school students had seen the material before, but the university still only spent 1 lecture on it and expected everyone else to learn it on their own or just review it like after class. So that was quite a shock. And then the programming courses are, I think, the most difficult. So what you learn in class is not too bad. It's very manageable, quite similar to what you learn in high school if you take a programming courses. But the assignments that you get every week are very hard and they go really in detail. So that makes sure you have a really deep understanding of what you learned in class and make sure that you learn properly and you have the ability to spend the time on all the work and have a good work ethic. Yep.
Thank you for that. Next, we'll be hearing from Annie.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with Henry and Maria. Things in university are generally, for the most part, a lot more self-learning. This applies definitely to all the programming courses as well. So the jump from high school to university for myself, I found that it wasn't too difficult in terms of the content that we were learning in classes. It was more so, again, the assignments that were a lot more in-depth and really, really there to test your knowledge of the material.
Thank you for your answer. So next question we have, what was your first co-op and internship experience like, and what was the application process? For this question, we will start off with Henry.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, so I'm just completing my first co-op placement with Nokia. So I'm currently working as an NSP software designer. And I'm working on the fault management team, which is basically in charge of detecting alarms, bugs, or different malfunctions across all of Nokia's systems. And so some of the tasks that I do are like adding new features. I started off with updating the company's README files, which is basically just quite easy, and it's just giving me an introduction to what the company does and some of their projects that I'm working on. So then I also added new features. So for example, one of my tasks was to implement 12-hour time format across the fault management systems. So it was currently in 24-hour time, and then I had to find everywhere that was in 12-hour and then change that. So after implementing a new task, I would have to manually test them, and then that would just include coming up with test cases and then documenting them on the platform where I complete my tasks. And then I also had to create automation tests so that in the future, when new features were implemented, it would ensure that the features that I added are still running smoothly and properly. So yeah, basically, it's just some easy tasks that a first year computer science student is able to do on his own. That's what I'm doing.
Awesome. So next we have Annie.
Thanks. Yeah. So at U of T, at least the campus I was at, we didn't have a co-op program. We had what's called the professional experience year, where you take 12 to 16 months off in second year and onwards to work in the industry. And I actually applied for my current co-op position as for a summer job after first year, and I didn't hear back from them, but in July, around July or June, before the fall semester begun, I received a call from a recruiter from Ericsson who asked if I would be interested in taking or considering the role, applying for the role in the fall onwards. At that point, I was pretty open to, taking a year off, perhaps extending my co-op term. So I ended up applying and somehow landed the job. So that's where I've been for the past year. I think if there's anything you can take out of this experience is, I feel like there's such a big rush for everyone to graduate. You want to graduate as soon as possible. Certainly, I went into university with that mindset, but keep your mind open for possibilities or opportunities that might come along at perhaps a more unconventional time. In terms of more so my co-op experience at Ericsson, I currently work as an automated test developer intern. So my role deals with building tools, designing tools in Python to support the test team. We work with a lot of data, so it's really interesting, and you get a really good view of how amazing computers are at data processing, kind of auditing information, and so on. If you're interested, feel free to ask me more about it after the panel ends. But apart from my work at Ericsson, I think Ericsson has a really unique work culture because they've also allowed me to get involved with a lot of initiatives on site. I've represented Ericsson at press releases at Carleton University as a student. They've also sent me off to conferences, namely one this past fall called the Women in Business Conference here in Ottawa. I've also had opportunities to volunteer at fundraisers through Ericsson, as well as, most significantly, developing Ericsson Ottawa's co-op program. So there's a lot of opportunities that you can get by just asking your manager even, are there any opportunities that I can volunteer on site? I would have never gotten otherwise if I hadn't. So definitely encourage everyone to try that out.
And now we have Maria.
So I worked as a junior software developer for the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Ottawa. And I thought it was a really great job experience, especially since it was my first co-op. And the job was to get tickets from clients. So like they could sort of send complaints for what kind of improvements they want. And then you will go out and enhance the web applications for MedTech. I've only ever worked in two-person group projects before this. I never with such a large team or with such a large amount of code. So I got to learn a lot about version control. And I also got the chance to apply what I learned in school to work in different languages. Like there was lots of projects in different languages. One would be in JavaScript and HTML. The next would be in VB.NET. But I also learned a lot about working in a business. Like MedTech worked in an agile Scrum environment, which is a very common project management system that a lot of companies use. So I was working in a smaller team of up to 8 people with other developers, QA, and a project manager, and we had short 30-minute meetings every day. We discussed what we did and what we planned to do and asked other people questions. And I had a lot of support from everyone on the team, and I had a supervisor as well. And my supervisor made sure to let me have time to figure things out on my own and never directly told me what to do when I was stuck. So she let me learn a lot independently. And as for the application process, I got the job through the U-Ottawa Co-op Navigator. Most of the time in U-Ottawa, CS students do their first co-op and second year, but there were extra positions, so I applied as a first-year student. And then you complete several co-op workshops to prepare your resume and to prepare you for the interviews. There's a specific format they need you to do for the resume at U-Ottawa, and it's not the same as a regular one, and it needs to get approved. Then through their website, they have a short period of time, about 24 hours, when employers post the jobs, and you look over descriptions and apply to all that interest you. My advice is to apply to as many that interest you, even if you don't have the qualifications, because a lot of employers want someone who wants to learn rather than someone who already knows everything. Then on the co-op website, it tells you if you've been selected for an interview, and you have to go in and do all the interviews you were chosen for. Most of them will be on campus or remote on Skype. And then U-Ottawa also uses a ranking system to tell you whether or not the employer chose you or not. So if they rank you 1 and you rank them 1 as well, you certainly get the job. Otherwise, if they just rank you any other number from 2 to 10, you don't know what it is. You just say ranked. And then there's a gamble, and you might have to move on to a second round. But yeah, if you don't get matched at all, you go to the second round and restart the application process. And that's sort of the process that U-Ottawa puts you through when you're going through co-op, but the people there help you figure it out, and it's not as confusing as I just made it sound.
And so for our next question, we have what are the common minors or electives that are taken with computer science, and what electives are you taking?
Yeah, so I guess I can start off with this. I'll talk more so firstly about what electives you take, because I think this one really depends on your school as well as your program. For example, at U of T, we have something called breadth requirements that I know many other schools do too. And in first year, I really tried to make sure that I covered all of that. What that meant is, as a computer science major, you're in the science, you're pursuing a Bachelor of Science. So they want to make sure that you take at least 2 semesters worth, so 1 full credit worth of humanities and social sciences. So essentially my first year at U of T looked more like I had 5 mandatory math and computer science courses. And I also took a global justice course, introduction to accounting, microeconomics, chemistry 1, physics 1, and I really tried to reach all of my breadth requirements. Whereas in a program like the one I'm going into, that I'm currently in at Waterloo and Laurier, we pretty much have no electives unless I want to take a 6th or a 7th course on top of my predefined workload. However, with those programs that are a little more strict, you'll find that typically they don't have any breadth requirements because pretty much you don't get a lot of options.
Thank you. Next, we'll be hearing from Maria.
I think a lot of common minors are in business, which is a pretty practical decision since a lot of computer science jobs are working for the government or for startups. And there's also a common double major of computer science and math, since double honors actually, since there's a lot of crossover between the courses that you have to take and a lot of jobs that require both. I'm personally taking a minor in psychology, so all my electives so far have either been psychology or biology classes. I'm personally choosing this option since I think it has some practical applications in research with AI, and that's what interests me. So I guess I'm just trying to combine certain things that I like and using that minor as to specialize my field more.
Awesome, thanks. Now for Henry.
So Waterloo also has the breadth and depth requirements for just CS. So lots of students decide to take those in their earlier years to get them out of the way. But you can also spread them out throughout your 5 years at Waterloo. And it's all up to like your personal preference. So Waterloo Computer Science is, it doesn't have too many required courses. So that allows you a lot of room to take courses that you like, or if you want to specialize or minor in something. So if you want to specialize in something, that means you just have an additional part to your degree, and it's not yet a minor since you didn't take enough courses, but they also offer many cool specializations such as artificial intelligence, bioinformatics, business, and software engineering. So you have lots of room to do that because of the lower like required courses for a computer science degree. And then you can also minor in something. So if you make that decision, then you have to take the regular computer science courses, and then all of your free courses would have to be devoted to the minor, basically. You won't have much choice after that. So I know a lot of people like to minor in another math subject. So that could be combinatorics and optimization, computing, or pure mathematics. And I also think it's possible to minor in a completely different area in a different department. But just to be sure, if you are thinking of that, you should definitely check the website of whatever school you're applying to, since I know for a fact that many programs such as engineering have restricted courses, so it would not be possible to minor in them. So I think there would be a lot of information on the university's website that offers details on how to minor in an area.
Next question we have, what types of courses do you take and how heavy is the workload? So we can start off with Maria.
So in first year, I found there's only 2 computer science courses, some electives, and mostly math courses required, such as calculus, linear algebra, and discrete math for computing. I found the workload to be quite heavy, but I also found that there was a lot of support from professors, TA, and student organizations to help you out. You can check when organizations post study sessions. Sometimes they post it on the Computer Science Association for students will email you if there's something coming up. You can also find that sort of information. I found it often on Facebook, on the group chats, or on there's a huge U Ottawa place where they post everything. But you can also check the professor and TA's office hours, since a lot of students don't actually go during the office hours, so most of the time they're available, and they're definitely the best people to ask since they're the ones grading your paper and teaching you, grading your assignments and teaching you, and I find that was very helpful for me.
Next we have Henry.
So for first year computer science at Waterloo, you take 2 programming courses and two math courses. So in first term, you learn Racket, you take Calculus 1 and Algebra, and then you have two electives that you can choose from. And most people decide to take a communication course in their first term. So a communication course is basically just an English course. You have a wide variety to choose from. There's public speaking, there's English writing, and there's just a bunch. And you have to take two communication courses for your degree. So you might as well take it in first year. That's the recommended sequence. So, and then in second semester, you take another CS course, which is C. You learn about C. And then you take Linear Algebra 1 and Calculus 2. And then you get two electives. So for me, I decided to get my second communication course over with. And I took music as my second elective. So basically, you have a lot of freedom in first and second year. And in terms of workload, I did find the workload to be quite heavy, especially for the computer science courses. Their assignments definitely took me the longest, and I had to spend a good portion of my week working on those. But I really think it's manageable if you have friends that you can ask for help or just work on assignments together. Definitely go to office hours, because there you can ask the professor questions, and it's really helpful. They can spend their time helping you. And then, so I lived on residence first year, and Waterloo actually had tutor sessions. So they paid upper year students to come to residence several times a week to hold sessions where you can just go do your work and then ask questions if you need help. And yeah, so that's in terms of how to get resources for, I guess, the material in class. And then just one other note for first year classes at Waterloo, there's an advanced version of all the math and CS courses. So those are harder than the regular ones, and they go more in depth. And a lot of students take them who want to challenge themselves. And most of them have like an additional requirement for entry. So they might look at your Euclid score, or they might have an entry assignment and you need to get a certain grade to be admitted to the class. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Now we'll be hearing from Annie.
Thank you. Yeah, I think as Henry and Maria have already touched upon, the common courses, obviously you have math and computer science. Since Henry already talked about at Waterloo, I guess I can talk more about at U of T. At U of T in your first year, you take, I mentioned a little bit earlier, two computer science classes, the Introduction to Programming and then Introduction to Computer Science, one in each semester. There's also I'm not sure if things have changed since fall of 2018, but there is also a 2-semester long, a full year course, a calculus course that you have to take. With the calc course at U of T, there are different levels that you can take, ranging from kind of targeted towards business students, towards science students, and then within the math and computer science faculty, there's also different levels. You can take the standard, we call it 135, and then there's a more proof-based one, 137, and then there's an analytics one, which is the hardest one at 147, I believe, or 157, something along that. So they do increase in difficulty, and depending on which course you take, obviously the heavier the workload it will be. I think I was one of those students who wanted to challenge myself a little bit, so I did take 137, but I found it was still doable, not too big of a jump from my experience in the International Baccalaureate program back in high school. However, there was definitely that aspect of needing a lot more self-discipline, time management skills that are needed with going to professors' office hours and attending those tutor sessions that upper year students put out for you. It's definitely doable. And even if you want to challenge yourself and take the analytics level, the hardest level, I'm sure those are doable too. Yeah.
That's very interesting. So for our next question, we have, what are your thoughts on the men to women ratio in your computer science classes? And we'll be starting off with Henry.
So I think the ratio isn't great, but it is slowly improving. So at Waterloo, I'd say it's about 30% girls, which is actually pretty high if you think about computer science. And I know it's much higher than the engineering faculty. I think it's a lot lower there. And I think it's like there's definitely more girls coming in every year, and the ratio is higher than what it was 5 or 10 years ago. So I think like I know a lot of girls avoid going into engineering or computer science because of this fact, but I don't think it's that bad. So I know Waterloo has a woman in computer science program, which I don't really know too much about it, but I just quickly looked at it before the meeting today, and it's basically a program dedicated to promoting gender equality within computer science. And then I know I have a lot of friends who are in that program, and then they volunteer for it. So I don't know if Annie could touch more on it, but I'm not sure too much about that program. But I think Waterloo, there's definitely like a lot of girls in all my classes. So it's the computer science and the larger math faculty. So you take most of your first year classes with everyone. So there's a lot of girls in all my classes. So it's definitely not very noticeable that, oh, there's like only guys, or like I don't see any girls. That's definitely not the case. So yeah, to conclude, I don't think it's that bad. And if you're a girl and you're thinking of computer science, don't be scared by the fact that there's not that many girls, since it's not very noticeable.
Great, thank you. Next we'll be hearing from Annie.
Yeah, this is an excellent question. And as Henry has mentioned, there's definitely still a room for improvement, but we are improving as a society, and I think that's awesome. Definitely at U of T, it was a little more visible, at least. I can't speak for all of the computer science classes because obviously I was only in one section of each, but there were, if you want to think a table of maybe 10 different tables in a classroom, in our tutorial, we would have kind of one table of females, which wasn't that bad. I mean, that created kind of a sense of community within the females. We really bonded with each other. Obviously, it would have been nice to see more representation, but I know that things are a little better in terms of, I know that the University of Waterloo does make an active effort to kind of recruit more female students, so that's awesome. And as Henry mentioned, there are many wonderful clubs on campus, such as at Waterloo, a Women in Computer Science. There's also clubs such as Women in STEM. I know there are multiple clubs in different campuses as well, not just at Waterloo, which fosters a really great community in which you can meet other women in your major in computer science and math and STEM related fields, who are often underrepresented.
Yeah, that's great that there's so many programs. Next we'll be hearing from Maria.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Henry and Annie that there is definitely a noticeable ratio, a gap, that it is improving. I find that, as Annie said, also that it brings the girls kind of closer together as well, to bond over that. So I find that I have a lot of close girlfriends in the program, but also guy and non-binary friends. And I found that currently the Computer Science Association president is also is a woman right now, and I find that within the Computer Science Association it's fairly equal, which is good. And in first year, the first programming class I had, the professor was a woman as well. And she organized this little session that we had where she invited all the female students in the class to come together, and she brought some guest speakers over, like other women from the industry. And we had a sort of meeting there, and we learned about, as well as this conference called the Grace Hopper Conference, I think, which is just this really big conference with lots of huge companies that girls can participate in. I think it's a girls only event. And I don't know, I've never been, but that definitely seems like an amazing opportunity for women in the field.
So now we have our last question, which is how can high school students get an internship? We'll start off with Annie.
Yeah, this is also a great question, one that I wish I considered more back when I was in high school. I think there are three main ways in which you can look to get an internship. The first one is just your standard through your school board's co-op program. I know, at least in Ottawa, where I grew up, both the Catholic school board and the public school board, the main two public school boards available there, do have a pretty good co-op program that does provide high school students with opportunities within the tech industry even. That whole system aside, if you don't want to go through your school's co-op program, I know there are also opportunities posted by companies regularly. I know Nokia has one specifically in Ottawa for high school students that you can apply to outside of school. And there's also other organizations, other companies doing similarly. Those are a little bit harder to find. Having worked on a high school co-op program at Ericsson, I've realized there's a large disconnect between kind of the industry professionals and perhaps contacting and getting access to these students. So sometimes it really just takes kind of one extra Google search to see and find those opportunities. The last one being, I think it's a little less conventional, but just as effective, reaching out to people. I know it's always scary making that first move, but if you see someone, maybe even a university student interning at a company in your city, which you're interested in, reach out to them and ask them if their company has any high school opportunities or opportunities for high school students. Alternatively, I've seen many high school students who leverages their family connections. So if both your parents maybe work at the company, and they might be able to ask around if there's any opportunities for high school students, or even family, friends, etc. Yeah.
Next, we have Maria.
Yeah, I think Annie highlighted some really great ways to get internships as a high school student. My friends who received internships in high school got their jobs through hearing about it from their teachers or through hackathons as well. One of them won a hackathon and got scouted by Kinaxis for a machine learning position in 10th grade. Another one of my friends had their teacher recommend them to a company because of their strong work ethic. Another one of my friends asked her teacher for opportunities and applied to one of them. There's lots of different ways to hear about internships, but I also wanted to mention not to beat yourself up if you don't have any internships. I didn't have any work experience in the field. Applying for my first job and ended up with the same type of job as most of my friends who did have it. You just have to be willing to learn a lot, which is the point of an internship anyway.
And last, we have Henry.
Yeah, so I think it's rare for high school students to get an internship. Like out of all my friends in CS, I don't know many, or I don't think I know any who did a high school internship. And I did not do any, I didn't even apply to any. And I really wish I had, because I think that would have helped me so much with my co-op process. So I think employers really like students who have some previous experience programming in the real world. So not just what you've learned at school, since that might not be enough all the time. But many companies offer internships just for high school students, and many times you don't even have to have any experience. So as Annie mentioned, Nokia has a summer program for grade 11s only. And I really wish I had known about this, since I found out about it after I got into university, and I was like, oh no, that's too late. I also know Google has summer internships for grade 12s, and you do that once you complete grade 12, and you do it over the summer. And that's also really helpful. So, and then the last thing is definitely having connections, like Annie said. If you have family members or friends who work at a company or in a programming related field, see if they can provide you with something, or if you can just tag along and see what they do. That's actually how I got my first co-op placement. I reached out and asked some of my friends, and then they referred me to their manager, and then I got an interview. So yeah, having connections is always good, and just ask around, don't be shy.
Wow, thank you to all our university panelists. That was a lot of helpful information. So we'll now be moving on to questions for our industry professionals. A little early, but that's okay. So to start us off, can you guys tell us what do you do and what kind of projects have you worked on? So we'll be starting with Andrew.
Hi, so I work on Google Hotels. My specific small team maintains a backend server that provides hotel information like hotel prices, room information, and amenities. One big thing I've worked on is our ranking server, It's a server that hosts a bunch of machine learning models, which we use to try to figure out what hotels a user would be interested in seeing. I've worked on a lot of projects because I've been in hotels for quite a while, but just a couple of them are, one of them was changing the way we internally represent machine learning features. Previously, our representation was only compatible with a single machine learning model framework. And then when we switched frameworks to take advantage of some new technology, we basically had to rewrite like over 1,000 lines of code to use this new framework. And then we realized next time we switch, which is definitely going to happen eventually, we're going to have to redo this again. So I kind of rewrote the system so that it was more flexible and more efficient. And this way in the future, when we inevitably switch to another framework, it should be very simple to switch. Another project I worked on was reducing our server's memory footprint. So machine learning models are really big. They take up a lot of space to load them onto our server so we can like apply them for the user. And one consequence of this is our ranking team wanted to load like over 100 models to try different things out, see which one worked best. But we literally couldn't because our servers were not capable of loading this much. So I spent quite some time trying to figure out where the bottleneck was, why it was taking so much space. And once I found this, I was able to like redesign our architecture to like share as much resources as possible and allow us to load more models with less memory. So I think currently today we load over 100 models and we could easily support up to 1,000, which allows our ranking team to like iterate much faster and produce better models.
Awesome. Next we'll be hearing from Katarina.
Hi everyone, I'm a senior software engineer at Shopify, and I've worked there for the last just over 5 years. So I've been quite a few different teams. I currently work on a product development team in the inventory space. So Shopify being an e-commerce software solution or just commerce in general. We also do retail in person. I work in the inventory layer, which is like tracking everything in the back end about like where those products are coming and going. Previous to that, I worked in infrastructure, so maintaining Redis and Memcache layers of Shopify. And then I've also spent some time working on performance, so working on flash sales. Yeah, the biggest shop that I used to work on was the Kylie Cosmetics and selling Yeezys. So if you bought like sneakers online and have hit a queue page, that was like one of the projects that I worked on before.
That's really cool. Next we'll be hearing from Brian.
Hi, so I'm a associate software developer at Fidelity, and thank you for including me in the professional section, even though it's kind of too generous, because I know Kat and Andy have been working for like several years now. I just started working a few months ago. So I just graduated college in May, and I just started working their onboarding program. So honestly, I hadn't been doing any projects. We've more been going through a learning program with frameworks and different languages that they want to make sure we understand how to use. So it's not really a lot of project work yet. I can say that over the past couple summers at Fidelity, I got kind of lucky and got to work on some cloud stuff, like moving or developing for their communication services that the agents use for calls to customers. And that was very nice. So yeah, currently just doing framework stuff, some languages, and making sure everyone has knowledge of that for the program before they get to their full-time job.
So our next question is, what are the challenges you have faced and when pursuing computer science? So for this question, we can start off with Katarina.
Cool. Yeah, I think some of the university students earlier touched upon this, and this is what I was going to say. But for me, I felt like that there was like a steep learning curve initially, like switching from high school to university. I graduated from biomedical software engineering, but that's not what I started university in. I started in pharmacology. So switching from that to software engineering, there was a steep learning curve. And then after graduating school, or even like starting the internships, I felt like there was so much to learn and to pick up. But like one piece of advice would be like everyone's in the same boat. Like it's just like a really big field with lots that you can learn. And so I think I would focus on like a T-shape. So learning a little about a lot of things, but then knowing something really, really well. And then choosing whatever that is that you want to be. Like maybe you're into mobile technologies, maybe you want to work more with like cloud infrastructure. and then going from there.
Next, we have Brian.
Yeah, so I just have to move because it's raining outside now. But in terms of like challenges pursuing computer science, I wouldn't say like there are that many besides getting to a good college and getting internships, because that might be kind of difficult. But I'd say in general, it's just balancing your workload with classes and social life and trying to get internships at the same time. That'd be the most difficult part for me. Yeah, I mean, there's not, it's like many other majors in terms of it being difficult, taking a lot of time, but as long as you commit to it and you spend time trying to learn things on your own, you'll be fine.
And now we have Andrew.
So my path was a little different than most of yours probably will be, because I didn't actually study computer science in college. I minored in it, which meant I kind of knew how to code, but that was pretty much it. I had very little other experience, and I didn't know a lot of the details. So kind of going into the workforce, I started as a software developer. So I kind of did a lot of learning on the job, which definitely made things harder. I can definitely say the learning curve is very steep, especially because every company uses like different technologies. I think when I first joined, I think they usually say it takes around 6 months to learn how to use all the tools that your team's going to use effectively, which is definitely not an understatement. I think even 6 months, even a year into the job, I was still learning how to use the tools we're using. So I think that's a really big, difficult part of the workforce, in that every company is like very different. And sometimes what you learn in one place, like you'll have to relearn other places because they do things differently. I think another really big problem I ran into was actually figuring out what problems I need to solve. Because a lot of times in like high school and college, and even in internships to some extent, the problem that you're solving is very like defined and scoped down. They tell you like, go implement this function or go fix this problem. But a lot of times in the industry, the problem is much more vague. There's like, something's wrong here, go figure it out and then fix it. And you spend like more than half your time figuring out what the problem is. And I think that's something that's really hard to learn, and you can't really practice it ahead of time. So it's something you got to learn on the job through doing, which I definitely think is one of the hardest parts of being a software developer. But the good news is generally you can pick it up pretty easily. Once you start doing it, there's other people to help you, and you'll naturally just get better and better through doing it.
Oh, nice. So the next question is, what are some of the benefits of pursuing a career in this field? So we're starting off with Brian.
Sure. So I'd say that first of all, it's like relatively high pay when you start off, depending where you start at. I know some other careers, they start off relatively low and they grow much faster, and they get to be paid very highly when you get into your later years, like 40, 50 or whatever. But CS starts off pretty high, and you can grow your salary pretty high over time, but it's not necessarily as high paying at the very end. Like if you're a manager at some kind of pharmaceutical company versus a manager in CS. But you do start off with a high pay, which I know a lot of people care about. It's good for investment early on. Also, it's more relaxed, I'd say, than a lot of other majors, because when you go to work for a CS company, it's like the environment's very relaxed. Like the managers, they understand that you need time off, or you need to go to see a doctor or whatever in the morning, and it's not always like, oh, you need to be working all the time. They want to see you at your desk typing away. It's not always like that. Being a manager, I'd say most of the time, my experiences is that managers are just as relaxed as you are. Like they also understand that you need your social life and your time to yourself. So that's another benefit, I'd say. But obviously, to get to that point, you need to work hard and make sure you understand your classes and your work, and you also need to make sure you're performing well. Like they understand that you relax at work, but as long as you're doing your work, as long as you're doing well. But yeah, I think for me, those are the main benefits.
Great, thanks. Now I'll be hearing from Andrew.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Brian's point. I think one of the biggest benefits of computer science is it's generally very flexible, in that since like a lot of the work you do is on a computer, you don't have to physically be there. And also, since you're working on like a product, there's no really defined working hours. Like for example, I also spent a summer on Wall Street doing some like financial things. And I know the culture there is very like, you have to get in at a certain time, you have to leave at a certain time, and you're like never allowed to leave ever. And computer science is kind of the opposite, and like in general, in that you can kind of work whenever works for you. Like if you need to take a day off or you need to take a couple hours off, that's totally fine. A kind of extreme example is I recently got a puppy, and I spent almost every day for 2 months working from home. And my team was totally fine with that because I still got my work done. I was still available for video conferencing when I was needed. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits of computer science. Another benefit that I only just started realizing is you can work from home with almost no disruption. So even though we're in quarantine right now and I haven't left my house in like months, I'm still doing my job. I say relatively less affected than most people. So if you want to prepare for like a future pandemic, or you think COVID's still going to be around in like 10 years, computer science is a great option. So you're not as affected. I think another really great benefit is I find the work very mentally stimulating, and that's like every day you're working on new problems, and a lot of them are like really difficult, which isn't always the case. I know a lot of people who I know who didn't go into computer science, they do stuff like on Wall Street or other things. They said that the work every day is kind of mundane. They're doing like the boring grunge work that's high level people don't want to do. Computer science is different in that at every level, you're really solving difficult problems. Like there's difficult problems for entry level people all the way up to like managers. So it's a lot more fun, I think, because I like being mentally like stimulated. I think a lot of other people also would agree that like they enjoy having to think and like getting to use their brain a little on the job.
And now we'll be hearing from Katarina.
Thanks. Yeah, I would echo both what Brian and Andrew said about it being like a flexible career path and a flexible job. The other thing that I wanted to echo that Andrew was saying about it being like stimulating and challenging is because you're working in technology. Technology is always evolving. There's always new things to learn and new technologies that are coming out or new ways to solve different problems. Like at Shopify, we used to have 2 data centers that we like physically owned and ran. And over the last 2 years, we've like moved everything to Google Cloud. So that was something like new and exciting that you get to learn at. And then the other thing that I wanted to add is that you can work in multiple domains. Like you can work for a tech company, but maybe for different types of products. So you can find things that really interest you. Like I have friends who love music and are also software engineers, and they work at SoundCloud. So there's like lots of different places that you can check out.
For our next question, it is, how much self-learning do you have to do in order to not fall behind in the technological advances? So for this question, we will start off with Andrew.
I say it definitely varies by person. I'll give you one kind of extreme example. One of my teammates is like super passionate about C++. Like he really loves this stuff, and he's always like up to date on the latest features. He would tell like the team over lunch about how like next year they're probably going to introduce something new to the C++ standard that's this really cool feature and let's do awesome stuff. And he's like super into it, and he even gives like talks to our team and also like our broader company about like best practices, new technologies coming out. So I think he's on one end of the spectrum in that he spends tons of his time like researching this stuff because he like really enjoys it. I'd say I'm on the opposite end. I do almost nothing outside of work to keep up with technological advances. Personally, I'm not a very tech-savvy person. Like it took me forever to figure out how to use them. So it's definitely not a requirement. And I definitely do learn a lot on the job, which would probably be easier if I spent a lot of time in my free time keeping up with things. But it is in no way required. So I think if you want to, if you're really interested in it, you want to do it on time, that's great. It'll probably help you out. If it's also not a good thing, that's not a problem. You can still be just fine in this field.
Next, we have Katarina.
Cool. Yeah, I would also echo what Andrew said, that there are people who spend a ton of time staying up to date on everything, and then other people who mostly just like learn the things that they need for their job. And it's okay to be on either end of the spectrum or anywhere in between. I personally like to do my learning either like listening to podcasts. So I like follow people who talk about new technologies or interview people who are building those technologies, or also reading books. One piece of advice I got though is like, you don't need to read a book like cover to cover. Like one of my favorite books is System Performance, and it's like this big. So just read the sections that are relevant to you at the time. And also there's like tons of blog posts. So you can like set up things to like filter blog posts to you. You can get them weekly, daily, whatever it is that you want to go with. But yeah, it's kind of up to the individual and like what you want to do. And then I do think like sharing is a really cool part about it. So how Andrew was saying, like his teammate shares with his team and with his company, like we do a lot of that at work as well. And also just like among friends, like, hey, I saw this is cool. I'm a lot more inclined to read something that a friend has shared with me. So that's a good way to learn as well.
And now we have Brian.
I'll give my 2 cents, even though I've only been employed for like 3 months. I'd say that in general, anything that advances in technology or CS, you really just learn on the job. Like you don't need to learn on your own time. You can if you want to, and you enjoy it, and that's great. But honestly, when you're on the job, you're working on a task or a bug fix or something, and you encounter an issue that requires this new feature that some language has given you. You'll learn it on the job, and it's honestly not that big of a deal as long as you are willing to learn and going out of your way to try to find those things. So really, like you could go on your own and do it, and that's definitely helpful. But you can definitely learn on the job with your team, with others, with peers.
Cool. So the next question is, what does the gender gap look like in your workspace? And we'll be starting with Katerina.
Cool. So I think this answer is pretty similar to how it looks like in schools that the university students were talking about earlier. So I know when I first joined Shopify 5 years ago in R&D, there weren't that many women. So like R&D, including like backend engineers, production engineers, front-end engineers. We also include like UX and design in R&D as well. So there weren't like that many women at all. In fact, I was like the only one on my team. But for context, my team was also only 6 people. And now 5 years later, there's definitely a lot more women at Shopify in R&D, also more women in general, specifically in engineering as well. I am no longer the only woman on my team. I also actually have a woman manager for the first time in my career, which I haven't had before, but that's pretty exciting and cool. Also at Shopify, we a couple years ago hired a woman she's the VP of engineering, or one of the VPs of engineering. And so there are like starting to be more women, not just like in the intern or entry level roles, but also in senior leadership and management as well. At Shopify, we have like a dev degree program, which is like students going to school and working at Shopify simultaneously. That's like 50-50 women to men gender split. And so that I think helps us have more women at Shopify specifically. And yeah, it's getting better. It's not 50-50 like in the actual workforce on your teams, but it is definitely more than it was 5 years ago. And yeah, if anybody wants to know my like personal experience or wants to talk and you identify as woman, or yeah, feel free to like email me afterwards if you want. I'm just kat@shopify.com. So yeah, give me a shout.
Awesome. Next we're hearing from Brian.
Sure. So I actually haven't been in the workplace yet because, the quarantine situation. We've just been doing this virtually for the program. But I can tell you that from this program and my internships with Fidelity, the roster for the internships and all the interns or for this program has been like, definitely not 50-50, obviously, like Kat said, but I'd say it's anywhere from like 70-30, 65-35, maybe 25-75 in the ratio of girls to guys, guys to girls. And I don't know, I feel like definitely for the internships, there's more girls ratio-wise than there are in the actual full-time workplace, because there are a lot of older people in the workplace that are more middle-aged, so they come from a time where there's more like male-dominant field, I guess. But I definitely think it's improving, and they're definitely going out of their way to try and include more diversity, which is great. I think a lot of companies are doing that today. So yeah, I think it's definitely improving.
Awesome, thanks. Next we're hearing from Andrew.
Yeah, I think my experience is pretty similar to what Kat and Brian said. My team is kind of an extreme that we are about 90% guys. There's like around 10 people on the team. I think 9 of them are men, so like 1 woman. The team, I think our broader like 100+ person team on hotels is much better, and it's like 70-30 to say about, but still definitely it's majority male dominated. I think this is definitely a problem that a lot of companies are trying to address. And actually, it's something that I learned is that So when I originally joined like the workforce and I hear about like diversity on board is obviously like, I just think like that part is like important. It's like ethical interview. But
Amy, hold on. Can you check your internet connection? Like, are you on Wi-Fi or you're on your phone? Because it's kind of crackly. What, are you still there?
Yeah, okay. While we wait for Andrew, we can move on to the next question. So for our next question, we have, which steps should we take during university or after to gain a better chance at obtaining a good job in the field of computer science? So for this question, we will start with Brian.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, obviously you want to try to get as many and as good of internships they can get that are possible, because obviously it gives you work experience, things on your resume that companies will see, and they definitely want to see that you've been working at internships during the summer or during the winter when you have time, so that they know you have actual work experience working with professionals, working on actual tasks that they need before for their company. So definitely try to get as many internships as you can. In terms of trying to get how you get those internships, your school could help you through their program, or you can definitely try to reach out to people you know. A lot of it is networking, getting referrals from people, friends, family friends that are older than you that have jobs already, because that gets your foot in the door and gets you an interview. And from there on, it's all about your actual skills. But just getting an interview is a big jump ahead, because it can be hard to get that. And once you get that, it's all about how well you prepared for it. And also specialize in something with your science that you enjoy. Because if you specialize in data science and you're not into big data or any sort of analyzation of data, then you're not going to spend as much time on it naturally. So definitely try to do something you enjoy in CS, and then spend time on it, get those referrals, get an internship, and that'll definitely help you get a better job once you're out of computer science in college.
So next we have Andrew, if you would like to test your audio.
yeah, can you all hear me? Okay.
Wait, maybe move to another place in your house, because it's still a little bit glitchy.
Okay. Okay. Can you come back to me?
Yeah. Okay, we'll have Katarina then.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I would say the exact same thing, that internships are super impactful and definitely a good way to get a job. That's exactly how I got my job at Shopify. I first started as an intern, and internships are basically kind of like a prolonged interview, right? Like it's a 4-month or 8-month or whatever duration, like testing period, both for you and for the employer. So like, do you like the job? And for them, like, are you a good fit for the job in the company? And so it's a great way to get future offers for full-time work. And then I think we spoke a little bit about like networking and talking to people that you know. I would also suggest like you can cold email people. And so like if you find people on LinkedIn, or if you go to campus like job fairs or hackathons or conferences, wherever it is, and you obtain people's emails, it's a good way. Also, to try and get your foot in the door, the one thing I would say if you're going to cold email somebody is like definitely provide a lot of context, like introduce yourself. Don't just like send your name and a resume, that might not get read, but like introduce yourself, say why you're interested to speak to that company, and also why you chose that person in particular. Like I know when I get an email and someone has clearly like found out a project that I worked on in the past and that is of interest to them, and that's why they want an internship, because they want to work on that team, I'm much more inclined to respond to that email and yeah, refer them along.
And now we have Andrew.
Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I definitely totally agree with everything Brian and Kat said. One thing I can add is I think it's really important to practice for interviews. Kind of one unfortunate thing is whether or not you get hired, a lot of times, especially when you're a new grad, it's based on your performance in the interview. And unfortunately, interviews and like real world coding don't really come together. They're kind of separate things, which is not great. Like it'd be better if it was possible to interview for like your technical abilities, but it's much harder than doing an interview. So I think one thing that's important is to practice interviews, like just for the sake of getting better at interviews. A lot of these things, like you need the technical skills from like your courses and your experience, that definitely helps. But I think doing practice questions or like meeting with your friends to like do practice interviews, that will go a long way in making you more prepared. And if nothing else, it'll help calm your nerves a little bit when you actually go for a real interview, which can make a big difference in just landing that first job.
I think like that's one thing to mention that's really, really important. Like preparing for interviews and getting those coding questions down in your head, those concepts. Like you'll go over all these different like algorithms for trees, for heaps, whatever you want to talk about in your CS classes in college, but you really need to practice these problems for these interviews, because basically interviews are just IQ tests, even though they don't correspond to your actual work. But companies just care about whether or not you seem smart, and that'll dictate whether or not you can learn quickly when you're at the job. So you need to get these like interview questions down, because that's super important. Like without knowing the interview questions, it doesn't matter if you're super good at in school, you have pretty good grades, if you perfect in exams, whatever. They really care about your interviews. Like once you get the interview, all they care about is how you perform with their questions and how you can solve their problems. So you really practice on your own time, get the other friends, practice online. It's actually kind of fun if you do with friends. So yeah.
Thanks, that's very helpful. For the next question, what are the hard and soft skills you need in order to succeed in this field? And what skills would you recommend to learn before entering the workforce? So we'll be starting with Andrew.
Yes, I think obviously technical skills are very important. I think a lot of the college students talk about this, but the actual specific languages you learn are not as important. On the job, whatever language your team uses,
Andy, do
this.
you want to just let someone else go first? Because you're also cracking up again. It was good for last one, but right now it's pretty bad.
Okay.
So Katerina, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, I can start. I think Andrew was just saying there, like a lot of technical skills are definitely important, and I would agree with that. In terms of like hard and soft skills, one piece of advice I first got when I started working on Shopify was like two things, or like two attributes would or help you be successful in your job and in your career, and they were being curious. So constantly learning, being inquisitive, asking why, figuring out like the deeper like whys and knowledge behind the problems that you're solving, and then also having grit. So some of the problems that you solve are going to be really hard. And I think someone was mentioning earlier, like when you start working more after your internships, like more full time, the problems aren't that well scoped down. So oftentimes you can spend a very long time, like months, trying to debug something that's happening in the system. You don't know why, no one else knows why, like your whole team is working on it. But having that grit and that like perseverance and work ethic to continue to try and figure out that problem and solve it is super, super impactful. So yeah, just recently we had a problem, took me like 3 months to solve, and it was like one line of change in the code, which is always hilarious and usually the point, but it like required like a very, very long description, an entire Google Doc about why that problem existed and how this was going to solve it. Another thing I think is like communication skills. So especially now, previously Shopify was mostly in office. We definitely had some people that were worked remote, but a lot of people worked in the office, and now we're all working from home during this global pandemic. So communication skills important in both scenarios, but now that we're all working from home, I'm starting to notice like written communication or asynchronous. So like maybe you're posting a video about yourself, or you've like written up an update or things like that are incredibly important to like learn and to keep working on.
Cool, thanks. So Andrew, if you want to test if it's working.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully it doesn't cut out again. So one thing I wanted to add was I think I missed a little bit of what Kat said, so hopefully I'm not repeating this, but I think being able to work with others is a really important skill. A lot of times in like college classes or even internships, a lot of the work you do is kind of your own project. You know, you have one assignment, it's just you working on it. But in the industry, that's almost never the case. You're always working on like a much bigger system with like the rest of your team or even other teams. So I think one skill that kind of you don't realize how much you need until you're in the situation is being able to work with other people.
Awesome, thanks. Brian?
Yeah, sure. So, sorry, I'm just moving again. Start to rain again, and I don't want to break the stuff up. So I'd say that I agree with everything Kat and Andy said. I really want to emphasize that point on communication because when you first join, when you first start your first job and you join a team, you're going to be surrounded by all these people who have been working for years, 3 years, 7 years, 10 years, 20 years in that team. They've been working on that project for a long time. You're just gonna be starting out. You might not even know the language they're working in. So you really need to know how to talk to them and see what they can teach you, because learning from them, getting direct information on your project and what you need to know for working on these tasks is going to be infinitely more efficient and faster than Googling this stuff yourself or trying to learn yourself. So you need to learn how to talk to your teammates, coordinate with them so you can learn from them, because they're going to have many years of experience on you. And I think that is like the main thing I would add to what they said.
So for our next question is, what do you think the future of CS looks like? Do you think that so many people flocking to the CS field is good or bad? So to start us off, Katerina.
I was really hoping I wasn't first. I have no idea what the future looks like or what it will hold. I think this like global pandemic has basically taught us that like the things that we thought might be true weren't, but other things have like become a lot more important. Yeah, so I truly have no idea. I'm excited that more people are joining computer science and joining technology. I think innovation comes from having different people and having different ideas. So I'm really excited about that. I like being part of something that continues to evolve and change and has a lot of innovation. So I hope that just more people joining continues to, yeah, like foster that growth and change.
Next, we have Brian.
Yeah, I completely agree with Kat. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen with the future of CS. I don't think anybody does, because it's just so unpredictable. You know, like AI, machine learning. Maybe it'll take over our jobs. Maybe we'll get more jobs because of that. I don't know. In terms of people flocking to CS, I do see that a lot. And I think it's a great thing because, like increasingly every day in the modern world, we're becoming more and more dependent on technology. So the more people that understand it and can work with it and improve it, make it safer or more responsible, I think that's great. Yeah, I'm optimistic for the future of CS.
And lastly, we have Andrew.
Yeah, so I know exactly what the future of CS is going to be. Actually, no, I'm kidding. I have no idea. I don't think anyone does, as Brian and Kat mentioned. I do think that it's not necessarily a bad thing that lots of people go into CS. I think it can be also a great thing. I think it's pretty natural because, as I mentioned before, the job is very flexible and like it has a lot of like perks that you can't get in a lot of other jobs, like your standard 9 to 5. So that's probably why a lot of people really like this field. I think one really great benefit of having more people join CS is, I think we can all probably relate to this if you've worked on CS stuff before, where you're like staring at a bug or staring at code for like hours and you can't figure something out. And then like your friend walks by, looks at it for 5 seconds and they figure out what's wrong. It's because like once you're staring at something for so long, it's very hard to like change your view and like view from different angles. So I think having new opinions and having new people like with new perspectives look at problems can make like a really big difference that you couldn't have done without them. So I think in that sense, it's a really great thing that a lot more people are joining computer science. I think one downside is things will be more competitive in the future. There's like twice as many candidates and only have so many positions. It's going to be much harder to get a spot. But hopefully at the same time, the opportunities will grow and that more and more tech positions will be available. So hopefully everything works out. But yeah, I definitely don't know what's going to happen next, but I think it's going to be good. I'm optimistic.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. So the next question is, what are some non-traditional paths you can take with computer science experience and skills? So traditional being like software engineering, IT, or web development. And so first we have Brian.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask this because again, I did just graduate, but like off the top of my head, I feel like you can do something called like freelancing, which is you market your own skills to companies for contracts, independent contracts that you can work on their projects for a couple months, a year, whatever they need you for. So that's definitely not super traditional in that you're not getting employed by one company or organization for a long period of time. You just rent out your work basically and your experience. Um, I mean, also besides like software engineering, IT, and web development, there's also many of the fields that are being like used today in the field, like machine learning, developing AI. I mean, that stuff is really for more advanced students. Like, so if you have to go for like a PhD and like go through other exams and stuff for that. But it's definitely new and more interesting, I'd say, than some of the traditional stuff. Yeah.
Cool, thanks. Next, I'll be hearing from Andrew.
Yeah, so I personally took a pretty traditional path. I think after graduating, I joined Google as a software engineer. I've been there ever since. So I don't know a whole lot about the other options. I can speak to one alternative that I've worked kind of closely with.
And do you want to try to redo what you did before to reconnect? Because it worked before and it's cracking again.
Or try using another device.
Okay, sure. Let me try it again.
Oh yeah, maybe we can hear from Kat now.
Sure. Yeah, I think there are tons of different like industries and domains that you can go as a software engineer. So like maybe you're still doing like traditional software engineering things, but like in an untraditional industry for that craft. In particular, one of my friends, he used to work in Vancouver for a film like production studio. So like when you film movies, you film them over the course of days, months, whatever. But when you later like edit the movie and when you watch it as one entire movie, you want the lighting to all be consistent. So if it's like a happy movie, you have happy lighting. If it's a sad or dramatic movie or like certain scenes, you have that. And so that actually requires like a lot of CGI and people who know software, and he used to work on that. So that's like a cool thing. I think there were actually, I didn't go to Waterloo, but maybe somebody from Waterloo can add in. I think there were 2 people from Waterloo who won an Oscar for like an animated movie in CGI being software engineers. So there are lots of cool different industries that you can join as well with the same set of skills.
Awesome, thanks. Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, so what I was mentioning was during one of my internships on Wall Street, where I worked at a trading firm, I also got the chance to work with some software developers who worked for the firm as well. And this is like not like the traditional tech company, this is like a finance company instead. And I would definitely not recommend this path because one, Wall Street's very stressful, much more stressful than your traditional CS would be. And second, because at least at the company I worked at, I found that the like traders and the other people studying finance were kind of valued a lot more than the software developers. Software developers were kind of like secondary employees that just help their primary employees do their job, which is a really bad thing. That's why I would not recommend doing something like that. Although maybe it's different other places, it's just my experience at that one trading firm I worked at. So if you're interested, give it a try. I would recommend not doing that though.
So for our last question, it's studying computer science can lead to many possible professions. How do you know which specific profession you want to follow and when to start working towards it? So to start us off, Andrew can go first.
Sure. I think one great thing about computer science is that the technical skills you learn can be applied to so many different things. Like you can do like front-end development, back-end, you can work on like movie animation and like pretty much anything you can apply computer science skills to. And one nice thing about this is you don't have to like stick with the same job. You don't have to like study one thing and do that for the rest of your life. You can switch in between. I know lots of people on my team who came from all different kind of fields, like at all different points in their career, they switched from doing like biomedical engineering or like being a surgeon to doing tech. Like skills were able, like stuff they studied before, are easily able to apply the job now. So I think I wouldn't worry too much about like deciding what you want to do now because you can just change this in the future. I think one important thing is to try to try like a breadth of different things. Like try to do some front work, try to work in databases, try to do some back end work, try to do lots of different things. Because that way, one, you get to see what you like and what you don't like. And two, in the future, if you ever want to like make a switch, it's much easier if you already have some experience and some background. But I think internships are also a great way to do this, because you probably have 2 to 3 internships during your college career. You try to do different things, get different experiences in the workforce, and you can help you figure out what parts you really like, what parts you don't like.
Okay, next we have, oh yeah, also you're also a little bit cutting. Maybe try going onto your laptop for the question session. And also, okay, for the next.
I can try that.
Okay, yeah. Next we have Katerina.
Yeah, I would totally reiterate what Andrew was saying. Like, feel free to try different things, different internships, even different like teams within whatever company you are working on or working in. It's definitely a good way to learn. And I think especially at the beginning of your career, it's a really good idea to do so, to try a whole bunch of different things. Like, I have been on teams that work like very low level infrastructure to like all the way working in product development, working in front end. Sorry, there's a huge storm. It just like whacked my window. Yeah, try different things. Don't be afraid to switch teams during your internships, to try internships in different fields at different companies. Companies that are super large, different areas of the company could be really different. So going to try those out too is definitely a good way to do it. And then how do you know which specific profession you want to follow? Pick what you like. And if you don't know what you don't like, try and figure out, or if you don't know what you like, try and figure out what you don't like. That could be a good place to start as well. And then don't be afraid to later change your mind. So I haven't had at all like a very linear path to here. I went to high school for ballet. I started university in pharmacology. I ended up graduating in biomedical software engineering. And now I just work in software engineering. So you can take many different paths and you can always change it up.
And for our last guest, we have Ryan.
Yeah, I agree with everything Kat said. I mean, I think really it's all about trying to figure out what you like doing, because you don't want to work at a job where, for 20 years, but however long you're working, you don't enjoy the work. So definitely just try to figure out things that you like what specific parts of the field. And that can be as simple as just Googling the different fields in CS, like machine learning, big data, things like that. And then just like seeing a very high level overview of what is being done in that field. And then from there, you can like delve deeper on Google, or you can like see if your school offers courses on those and take those just to see if you like them. Because it's really, really important that you enjoy what you're doing, or else you're not going to enjoy doing it for a long time. And you're also not going to be very good at it, because you're not going to be spending the time, spending a lot of focused time on it like you would usually if you enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much to all our panelists for that wonderful insight into a computer science career.
So now we will be going to the question period and asking the questions we gathered throughout the panel. Also, before we start, we want to ask the panelists if they're interested in a networking session after the 20 minutes. If you guys are okay, just like do a thumbs up. We are acting with a thumbs up, or yeah. Okay, that's good then. Okay, we can start with the questions.
All right, so just going up to the first question. So a question for Henry, how important is taking the Euclid's test? If I don't do well on it, will it affect my application?
That's a really good question. So if you don't do well on it, no, it won't really affect your application. So not doing well on it is way better than not doing it at all. So I think Waterloo really wants to see its applicants take the initiative to participate in the contest in the first place. And if you do well on it, that just helps your application. If you were maybe on the edge of being accepted, Waterloo will push your application up because of Euclid, and you might get an acceptance. But if you didn't do well on it, then nothing matters. It doesn't, nothing changes. They'll just look at your application normally and what you had from before. So yeah, just take it if you are able to, and it's really helpful.
Awesome. So next question is for Annie. I've heard that U of T admits you into a general faculty during first year, and depending on your grades, you then specialize for your computer science degree second year and up, and you get admitted into your specialized degree based on marks in your first year courses. So my question is, what specializations in CS are the most popular, and how many students end up not getting into the degree program they want second year and up? And if you don't get into the specialization of your choice, what do you do?
Yeah, that's a really amazing question, and glad to see that you've already done research into the program and how it works, because certainly going in, that was a little bit of a surprise to me. Just to recap how U of T works is in first year, in high school, you do apply to a specific program like computer science or math, but in first year, we're all in just kind of generally your faculty. What that means is if you if you get accepted as a computer science student, you have the priority to select those computer science classes, those prerequisite courses that you need to take in order to apply for post in second year. So you're not really in your program until second year. What that means is you could technically apply to U of T as like a visual arts major, and if you're lucky and you're able to get all the course selection right into the computer science prerequisites, you could technically end up with a computer science degree. With that said, there are many different programs and specializations within CS. We do have a general major, a general major, a specialization, different specializations, and then minors as well. I'm not too familiar with the specializations. They are called focuses. After my first year, I applied and I was in the bioinformatics specialization within the CS major because I was interested in the intersection between computer science and health tech research. But there's definitely AI, machine learning, all of those focuses you can apply to as well. If you do not happen to make the minimum to get into post, there are options for you. The recommended one is to firstly sign up as a CS minor and then take those second year courses and then reapply to post again at the end of your second year. There are also other options in that because it is a little more broad, you could decide to instead do a major in math or in economics or kind of shift completely. But essentially that post system is kind of that barrier that stops a lot of people from proceeding in their journey in computer science. So it is something that you have to be aware of if you do want to go to U of T for computer science.
Cool, thanks. Another question for Henry. Would it be useful to participate in a hackathon even if I can't get a reward in it?
Yeah, I'd say definitely. I've been to a few hackathons and I didn't win any, but I think it's the experience that counts. The projects that you make at a hackathon, you can put them on a resume and they're usually pretty impressive. You get to work with people at hackathons, so that's also a really nice experience. Many times if you go to a hackathon in a different city, you can make a team with new people that you've never met before, and then you get to expand your network and make new friends. And I also really like the aspect of the sponsors at the hackathons. So when I went to a recent hackathon, I printed out a bunch of my resumes and just went up to sponsors and just chatted with them and then asked them if they were looking for co-ops. And then if they were, I would give them a resume. And yeah, that was a great networking experience too. So honestly, I don't think hackathons are all about winning. It's the experience that counts and meeting new people. That's the most important for me.
Awesome, thank you. Next question is, how can you ensure that your voice is heard when you go to a job or internship and people take what you have to say seriously? So if anyone is interested in answering that question, you can go ahead.
What was the question? Was it how to make sure people take you seriously in internships?
Sorry?
What was the question? Was it how do you make sure people take you seriously in internships?
Yeah.
I can try to take that. So I mean, at your internships, it's really like you don't have a huge say at the beginning because you are just an intern. You're only there for a few months or maybe 4 or 8 months. But as long as you work hard and you tell them that you want more responsibilities, you want more tasks, I think a good manager, a good team will try to do that. And as long as they see that you're completing the work they give you, they will try their best to give you work that you want to do and that they have extra of. So, and you can just tell them I want to do more work with CS. I want to do more work in this back end in the cloud or something. And hopefully, as long as you're doing well with them, they will give you that opportunity.
Awesome, thank you.
We
So
can add a little bit on there as well. For the interns on my team and just in general when new people join. I think Andrew mentioned this earlier, there's like this element of fresh eyes. And so I really appreciate interns and new hires who take the time to ask questions, ask why we've built certain things in the way that we have or why certain things work the way that they do, because it not only helps them onboard and gain context, but it also helps the current team who's built that or the next team who's going to build it solidify the historical answers to the why and the historical reasons that it was built that way. So if like I can't explain to the intern why something was built in that way, then maybe like we need to revisit that. And it's yeah, a good opportunity to have fresh eyes. I think when you start, you probably ask a lot of pretty basic questions, but as you start to learn and get more context, the questions that you ask are at a deeper level. And then once other people see that, like I know when I notice people doing that, I'm like, oh, cool, okay, they're starting to understand things. They can now like work on a bigger problem or work on a bigger chunk of it. And I'm more willing to give them a bigger size project. I hope that answers the question.
very cool. So this is a question for Annie now. Does IB HL Math give you any advantage during the university application process?
Yeah, good question. Sorry, let me gather my thoughts. I think in terms of the Canadian university application process, the fact that you're taking IB classes, AP classes, kind of advanced classes, for the most part, for most universities, don't kind of give you an advantage in any way. Most Canadian universities do look at your top 6 marks and just take it as is, and that's how they measure kind of your academic side of things. However, I would definitely say that HL Math does really well prepare you for the content, the course content that you're going to take going into university. So in a way, it is worth it.
Cool, thanks. So the next question is, how can you skip courses in university, for example, by testing out or using AP credits, and can it help you save money?
I guess I can start off with an answer. I took a few AP courses in high school, but I didn't actually apply any of them to university. But I think if you take, so Waterloo has the depth and breadth requirements, so it requires you to take a certain amount of credits in like humanities, social sciences, science, and stuff like that. And if you don't want to take any of those courses because you don't really like, either you don't like them or you don't think they'll advance your education. I completely agree with that. If you happen to take AP courses during high school, I think many of Waterloo's faculties take AP credits as a university credit. However, that does not apply to any math or CS courses at Waterloo, since Waterloo considers their math and CS courses very advanced, and your AP credit definitely won't be enough to cover what you would have learned in university. So for Waterloo, at least, I know it would work if you took AP courses in like one of the subjects that are not the main ones. So yeah, that would be the only case where you don't have to take the course.
Just to briefly add on to that, oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to briefly add on to that, in terms of saving money, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you picking your IB or your AP or advanced courses based on how you could possibly save, because in the long run, most first year courses are prereqs for your upper year courses, which means that even if you do fill out, let's say, a distribution credit, like I did with biology for my requirements as a bioinformatics, somebody who wanted to go into bioinformatics, it didn't really help me because I couldn't replace that with an upper level course, if that makes sense. So in the end, I still was paying for those first year courses, as you heard earlier, accounting, economics, that weren't really relevant to my degree, but they were interesting. But keep that in mind when you do look.
Okay, thank you. So next question is there any unhealthy competition within workspaces in computer science?
Well, I found for my job that there wasn't very much competition at all in the workspaces, and that it was mainly all supporting one another. And I don't know, I guess I don't have that much experience. This is my first co-op, but I find that whatever project you're doing, you're all working on it together. It's I mean, you're working on it currently, but then later someone else will pick up the same project. So whatever you're working on, you always have this support from your teammates. It's never really been a very competitive environment. It's more collaborative because ultimately you're all working on the same thing and you want to deliver the same project to the customer.
I agree with that. I'd also add that a lot of it also depends on your work environment. Like I know some companies, I suppose like Google or Fidelity, wherever else, it's a little bit more relaxed in terms of people aren't really competing with each other. It's not really a super stressful environment. But I know some other places that some of my friends work at, like Amazon, it's a really competitive environment. And sometimes what can happen is other teams will try to like leapfrog you in terms of the work, or like maybe a team member will like take over the work you're doing because they just been assigned it and they'll do it a little bit faster. It's not really competitive, I'd say. It's just more of people trying to pick up slack or trying to make things go on faster because it's such a intense and a little bit more stressful work environment. So a lot of it does depend on where you work.
Oh, that makes sense. Thank you. Next question is, how important are your school grades when applying to internships and co-ops, and do they even matter?
Well, I would say a lot of the employers that I talked to during my interview, they said they didn't even look at the grades at all. Like the employer who hired me said they didn't look at the grades, but for the co-op resume, they do include your grades on it, and they have a transcript of all the grades you have and your GPA, so it's still on it, and they can take a look at it at any point. So I would say it's still definitely important, and you want to make sure that whatever classes you're taking, especially in computer science, that you do well in them because you're really going to have to apply that knowledge. So you want to really have that understanding of the basic classes that you're taking. So you do want to do well. But overall, I don't think that's as important as having experience and as doing your own project and being able to take initiative and learn.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Next question is for Henry. Where do I find hackathons? Is there a website or is it a Google search?
Yeah, I think there's a website. Is it called DevPost, I believe, where it has all the like upcoming hackathons, and you can also check out people's projects. So like all the submissions for the hackathons go on that. And I need to double check, but I think it's DevPost. If any of you know for sure, it's DevPost. But also you can see the winners of the hackathons, which is really cool. And I get a lot of inspiration for hackathon projects from there. And also when you go to university, there's also a lot of like advertisements for hackathons. So at Waterloo, Hack the North is, I think, one of the biggest hackathons in North America. There were a bunch of flyers everywhere, and there's no way you won't hear about it. Like your friends will all be talking about it, like asking you to sign up and stuff. So I think you can also just Google search and you'll find like a lot of them. So like you can apply and go if you get it.
Awesome. Next question is for anyone from Waterloo. How easy was it to find your first co-op or internship through Waterloo's system? Did you apply through their portal, and how many places did you apply to?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part of the question again?
Oh yeah, for sure. How easy was it to find your first co-op or internship through Waterloo's system? Did you apply through their portal, and how many places did you apply to?
Oh, okay, yeah, I kind of skipped over this part during the panel part. So Waterloo has their like little co-op platform called Waterloo Works, and it's the reason why Waterloo has such a good co-op reputation is because a lot of big companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon all like come to Waterloo Works to look for co-op students. So it's really easy to follow along, and then there will be people who explain to you how to use it if you go to Waterloo. Basically, you upload your resume, cover letters onto the website, and then it automatically has your transcript. And then you can just look through the different job postings and then apply to the ones you want. So how it works is there's like a main round, which is when you apply to, I think, 50 or 150 jobs, that's your limit. And then you do, companies look at your resume and your application, and then they will go through an interview process. So it's really common for you to apply to like 50 or I think it was 150 jobs and then only be selected for 3 interviews, or a lot of people don't even get a single interview. But if you do get an interview, you go to the interview building to do it. And then once main round is over, you can see what the results were. So it's similar to what Maria said with like the ranking process. If the company wants you, you see they rank you as 1. And if they didn't rank you as 1, that means they rank you lower, but you don't know. So you kind of have to make a gamble if you want to if you want to place them first. And then basically they just match you based on rankings, which is a little bit complicated. I'm not even too sure about that since I skipped over that process. As I mentioned, I got a placement through a connection. So yeah. And then if you don't manage to get a placement in the main round, you go into continuous round. And then that just means you apply to jobs as they appear in the portal, and then you do interviews, and it's like instant offers. So if they want you, then you know, I think immediately. And if you didn't get a placement, then you just keep going, keep applying, keep doing interviews. And yeah, so I think that's the process.
That's really interesting. So the next question is, how do you stand out in resumes?
I can try answering this one. When I look at resumes, I mostly skip down to the personal projects. So I see like what people have been working on. Sometimes I look at like the classes they take to see like where their interests lie, but I mostly look at what are the projects that they worked on, either for school, hackathons, or just on their own, and usually go straight to their GitHub and browse it. The first things I kind of look at are do they have a README? Do they tell me what it is? Or am I just like plunked into their code and trying to figure out what it is that they built? And then, or is there like, is it live in production and can I see this? Like, is it an app or a website or somewhere that I can like play with directly? So those are like the things that I look at when looking at resumes.
I guess I can ask a question. So this question is directed at Andy. So as Google is very difficult to get in, how did you prepare for the interview and what type of questions were asked?
Sure. So how I prepared was just doing lots of questions. You can like search online for like, I think it's like LeetCode or something, has lots of different questions you can practice with. So that's one thing I did, just like doing lots of different questions. And part of that, just getting experience, like of course you learn in school like what data structures like you can use and what they're good for, but being able to apply them, I think takes a lot of practice. So I think just doing questions for practice is really helpful. Sorry, the other question was, sorry, what was your other question?
What type of questions were asked?
Oh, I see. So I think that varies a lot. As an interviewer for Google, I know that like we have like hundreds of questions in like a question bank that we can pick from, or we can just make up our own question. So it's really going to be different. Like, if you go for an interview twice, you're probably gonna get different questions every time. So in that sense, I wouldn't really worry about like trying to figure out exactly what question they're gonna ask ahead of time because it's pretty much impossible. I would just work on like doing practice questions so you're more familiar with how to think on the spot and how to apply what you've learned. And then whatever question you're hit with, hopefully you can figure out on the spot thanks to your practice.
Cool, thank you. So my internet cut out, so I lost all the questions sent before like 3:59. So if you sent a question, could you please resend it? Sorry about that. But I do have another question here. Does being in a STEM program in high school increase your chances in university admissions?
If this question is too difficult to answer, we can move on.
Well, I could try and answer. I think that I was not in a STEM program. I went to an art school actually before I did computer science. So I find that, but I took a lot of my courses in math, and I took some computer science courses and did all the requirements and did other things related to computer science. So I find that, at least for me, it didn't really affect it as much. But I think that it just helps you get more prepared when you start going to classes.
Awesome, thanks. So, sorry. For both professionals and university students, did you pursue a master's in computer science, or are you interested in one, and would you recommend it?
I would
start.
answer this, but
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I'll leave to Kat and Andy because I'm not like super experienced in the field yet.
I was just going to say I did not pursue a master's. Yeah, I graduated with a Bachelor of Engineering in Biomedical Software Engineering, I think. And yeah, I didn't pursue a master's. I, at the moment, don't have an interest in pursuing a master's because I feel like I learn a lot at my current workplace and on the job. So I feel like I'm getting that like education experience already. But I do have friends who have gone and started work and then gone back to school to do a master's or to do a PhD or did one right after their like college or university experience. But I think it's really up to the individual and what you're interested in.
What I will add is that I know that a lot of companies, Fidelity, Google, whatever, if you start working for them out of college and you want to go for a master's, they will oftentimes reimburse you for that or help pay for it. And that can be very useful. So don't feel like you're pressured to decide right now or at the end of college whether or not you want to do masters. You can always apply for a job, get a position, work there, and then see if they have a program, because a lot of companies do, and that can help you pay for your masters or even get into a specific program you're interested in.
I can also add just my opinion on this. So I also didn't do a master's. I have a bachelor's, and then I actually only have a minor in computer science, but then I joined the workforce. And I would definitely never go back for a master's, just personally, because I think pretty much everything about my job I've learned like on the job. Probably like 95% of it I learned through working. So in that sense, I feel like if I went back for a master's degree, it would take a lot of time and be really hard, it'd be a lot of work and cost a lot of money. And I don't think it would really help my career basically anyway. But I do know lots of people do masters, and then a lot of times when you join a company after your master's, you start at like a higher position or you start with like a higher salary. So there is some return there. But personally, I enjoy working a lot more than I did like studying in classes, which is why I would much rather be working in the workforce than go back to school for a master's.
To add on, I guess, my 2 cents, if you guys are interested or early on that you want to get into research or do pursue a master's, it would be worth your time to look into your university or your undergrad program of choice, because I know at University of Waterloo we have an accelerated master's program that you could get started in your final year of undergrad, which is really awesome because that cuts down on the time and some of the costs arguably as well.
Awesome, thanks. So the next question is, how much do your grades matter when applying to co-ops and internships while in university?
I think we covered this question, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I do think
Oh,
we
okay.
answered that one. Actually, sorry. The next question is for Katerina. What is the best way to prepare for the dev degree to get a Shopify internship?
Is this question about joining dev degree or once you're in dev degree, how to get an internship? I can answer in both ways.
Okay.
So when you are already in dev degree, part of that position is like working on teams. So like the internship in a sense is like kind of already set up for you. You do have to like interview with multiple different teams that are taking on dev degree students. But the interview process is a lot less, it's just a shorter process than it is when you are not yet an employee or you're outside of the company. So that interview process is mostly like pair programming, maybe once or twice with different people on the team, and sort of feeling out like what the team needs and what the interests of the dev degree student are. To get into the dev degree program, I have never, I'm not part of that selection process, so I don't know how they pick students to go into the dev degree program, but I think there is like a lot of information on the website. And I assume it's like a lot of things that we look in internships as well. So people who have a lot of initiative, who want to learn, who like can be independent. So like, can you learn on your own? Like, and things like that, I assume are things that get looked at, but I have never been actually part of the process of selecting dev degree students. But if you email me with your like specific questions, I can go get more information for you after.
I actually applied to the Shopify Dev Degree program, but I got rejected. So I can provide some information on it. So
Cool.
I think you need to apply to Carleton University or York University, which are the two universities that have the Dev Degree program. And then once you get an acceptance from them, then you can go ahead and apply from the Dev Degree website. And then they just have a bunch of like short like essays you have to answer. Like they have prompts, and then I think you might have to attach, well, I think they see your grades, and then if you make it past the written part, then you go for, I think, the interview process, and then there's like a few stages of interviews, and then, yeah, and then after that, if you pass all of those, then you're on the team, I think.
Awesome, thanks, Henry.
Yeah, thanks to both Henry and Katerina. So the next question is, in which case would one take a double major, a major with a minor, etc.? So I think that's just like maybe explaining what they are, possibly.
Well, there's lots of different options for what you can take. If you want to take, for instance, a double major, that might mean you have a really big interest in both fields. So like if you want to do math and computer science and you're really specializing yourself towards that field. And if you want to take a major and a minor, that's also really useful because at least for the University of Ottawa, they have certain priorities for certain students. So if you are in the computer science program, your first priority, you're going to for sure get into a computer science class. But for instance, when I wanted to take psychology classes, at first I didn't have a minor, so I would have to, everyone else would get priority seating before me. And having a minor helped me get more seats or more availability to get into that class. And having a double major automatically gives you priority in both of those classes, so you'll for sure get to be able to take the classes in both of those fields that you're interested in. And that's, I think, a big advantage regarding the classes you can take.
I think to add on to that, like the difference between a major and a minor as well as specialization is oftentimes how many courses you'll take related to that subject. For example, maybe for a major, you will take a minor, you'll take 8 courses, whereas your major will require upwards of 12, 15, 18. Obviously, if you go into specializations, you'll have to take even more courses related to that specific specialization. So in terms of fitting in double majors and minors, you'll have to also consider how many courses you can like physically fit into your timetable to hit all the requirements in order to have that major, minor, or specialization.
I just wanted to add my experience with this, and that's when I was in college, I graduated with 2 majors in statistics and computational finance, and a minor in computer science. And the reason I had so many is because I was actively trying to get like as many majors and minors as possible. And actually, I also tried to get an econ minor, but I couldn't fit into my schedule. And after graduating, I realized I don't use like anything I learned. Like I do computer science now, so I would have been much better off if I had just done a major in computer science, nothing else. So I think what I'm trying to say is, don't try to take a ton of courses and get a ton of majors, minors, just like for the title. Right? I think you should really think about what you're interested in and what you actually want to do, and you should focus your time toward that. Even if it means you only end up with a single majors. But that's going to be more useful if you're actually going to use it than if you have tons of different like titles and they're not relevant for you at all.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight. So the next question is for Kat. What side projects stood out to you on some of the resumes you viewed?
Cool. So I like, this is kind of a helpful answer, but kind of not. I like projects that use technologies that I don't know. And this is also something that I like an interview process. I like when interns come. So I didn't know Python, like I didn't learn it at school, and I've actually learned it like through interviewing candidates, because most of my time is spent in Ruby and in Rails. So yeah, I like projects that use a lot of different technologies. I like if I can learn something. So I will ask a lot of questions in an interview, and that kind of means the candidate has to have like a bit more than just like surface level knowledge of the language or whatever it is that they're using. I don't know, like Docker, or if they like are using Kubernetes, I don't know, like whatever it is, they need to have like a bit more of a surface level knowledge. So I like it when people can explain to me why. I also really like when people either in the interview or like in their README describe why they made the decisions that they did. So like why choosing specific technologies, and then like architecture decisions, like why did you go that way? What are some other options that you could have done? Why did you not choose those options? Also, like a totally valid reason is like, this was the fastest thing to build and I have a lot of things to do as a student. Because it's also interesting to learn like, oh, what is the fastest approach to get this running? Like, even if like that's not like maybe sustainable or won't scale. So those are kind of things that I look at. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's very detailed answer. Thank you.
If there are no more questions, yes, that's all for today then. So thank you to all the panelists who are able to join us, and Project Tech Conferences for sponsoring us today. So thank you all to all the participants for joining us, and we hope you had a great time.